A 6-year-old boy was separated from his mother in a supermarket. And he began to frantically cry out, "Martha, Martha, Martha." That was his mother's name. And she came running, of course, quickly to him. "But honey," she admonished, "you shouldn't have called me Martha. I'm mother to you." And he said, "Yes, I know, but this store is full of mothers." It's wonderful, isn't it? I've been going through a number of things. I shared some last year with you on this Mother's Day Sabbath about what mothers have taught. Someone wrote this: "You turn into a mom when you automatically double knot everything that you tie. You find yourself humming the Barney song as you do the dishes. You hear a baby cry in the grocery store and you start to gently sway back and forth, even though your children have left home. You spend a half an hour searching for your sunglasses only to have your teenager say, 'Mom, why don't you wear the ones that you have on your forehead, in your hair?' You're out for a nice romantic meal with your husband, enjoying some real adult conversation, when suddenly you've reached over and started to cut up his steak." I found these things that our mothers taught us. My mother taught me about religion when she said, "You had better pray that comes out of the carpet." My mother taught me about time travel. "If you don't straighten up, I'm going to knock you into the middle of next week." My mother taught me logic. "Because I said so, that's why." My mother taught me irony. "Keep crying and I'll give you something to cry about." My mother taught me about the science of osmosis when she said, "Shut your mouth and eat your supper." My mother taught me about stamina. "You'll sit there until all that spinach is gone." Reminded me of a picture that I have someplace in my computer about our youngest grandson, David. And he just had a problem eating all of his food. And we have a picture of him with his head, and I don't know whether it was oatmeal or spaghetti or whatever, but his head is down like that. And my son took a picture of it, and I cherish that. And every time I think about this, I think about that. Stay there. You're going to sit there until you eat all of that. Anyway, my mother taught me about envy. There are millions of less fortunate children in this world who don't have wonderful parents like you do. My mother taught me about anticipation. Just wait till we get home. My mother taught me about receiving. Boy, you're going to get it when we get home. My mother taught me about medical science. If you don't stop crossing your eyes, the wind will change and you'll stay that way. My mother taught me how to become an adult. If you don't eat your vegetables, you'll never grow up. My mother taught me about wisdom. When you get to be my age, you'll understand. And then my mother taught me about justice. One day you'll have kids, and I hope they turn out just like you. I want us to turn to Proverbs 31. Those are fun things, not bad things, just things that remind us of our moms. But I want to share with you, just briefly, 3 thoughts about moms today, and I want to go to Proverbs 31. We're going to look at 3 things about mom, about a mother. We're going to look at her hands at work, her mouth speaking, and her heart loves. There's a story about a boy that got his first job. And he was boasting about the amount of work he did. And he said, I get up at 5 a.m. and I have my breakfast. He was asked, does anyone else get up too? Oh yeah, Mom gets up and fixes my breakfast and then fixes Dad's breakfast. And what about your dinner? Oh, Mom fixes that too. Does your mother have the afternoon to herself? No, Mama cleans the house, looks after the other children, and then gets supper for me and my dad. Then we watch TV before we go to bed. What does your mother do? What does she do? The boy replied, well, Mama washes some clothes and irons the rest of the evening. Do you get paid? Of course Dad and I get paid. And what about your mother? Does she get paid too? And the boy replied, Mom, get paid? Mom don't get paid. She don't do any work. Well, of course we know that that's not true. Let's look. If there's anyone today that believes that moms don't work, I would suggest that we turn to Proverbs 31. I want to just look at some verses. The first thing that I want to look at is her mother, the mother's hands. And I want us to look at verse 13, where it says she looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. Verse 19, she stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. Verse 22, she makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. So, according to this, Mom sews. Okay, the work of her hands. She shops, in verse 14, bringing her food from afar. She provides food for her family, in verse 15. In verse 16, she considers a field and buys it, and from her earnings she plants a vineyard. Our text also says that mothers, in verse 15, she rises while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. In verse 18, she senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. Verse 27, she watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She isn't lazy. So there you go. We could probably say to that young boy, and maybe many husbands, this is what Mom does. She may not have a job outside, but this is what she does. Let's go on to what her mouth speaks. In Proverbs 13, verse 26. It says she opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. When preacher John Wesley was a student at Oxford University, he was shocked by the amount of drinking done by the students. After writing to his mother, Susanna Wesley, for her counsel, he received these following words from her. My dear son, remember that anything which increases the authority of the body over the mind is an evil thing. Great instruction. And one that I'm sure that Susanna Wesley, it was only one of many things that she said. Words of wisdom to her children. A London editor one time submitted to Winston Churchill for his approval a list of all those who had been his teachers. And he returned the list with this comment when he said, quote, "You have omitted to mention the greatest of my teachers, my mother." Couldn't help but also think about young Timothy. What was Paul's commendation to Timothy? He said, "I know that that faith that your mother and your grandmother taught you lives in you." So a woman not only works with her hands, and sometimes without thankfulness, but she also speaks words of wisdom. I was reading on Facebook this morning something that somebody put on that you come to the age where you understand and know that your mother knew a lot or knew everything. And that's about the age that you have children who believe that you don't know anything. Well, it's true, isn't it? And it's not only for women, but it's also for men. It's also, I can remember thinking that my dad, I was 14, 15 years of age, and I thought my dad was dumber than a can of beans. You know, that he didn't know anything. After all, he only had an 8th grade education. I was, in high school. But I learned later on, understood later on, the wisdom that both my mother and father had. My mother was a worker, but my mother also had a lot of wisdom. And it was all geared toward protecting us. You see, God is like that also, is He not? Is He not one who wants only the best for us? That doesn't put things in our path to destroy us. What does it say in Jeremiah? "I know the plans that I have for you. Plans for good and not evil. To give you a hope and a future." You see, that's what we want for our children, is it not? If there was something that we could do to keep our children from having to struggle like we did, we would probably go ahead and do it. Now, it might not be the wisest thing to do, but there are those times when our children need a helping hand. And this is the thing that happens. We have a foster daughter in Texas. And she calls. And the minute, if I pick the phone up and I know that it's her, I know that she really doesn't want to talk to me. Who she wants to talk to is Margaret. And so I'll answer the phone and I'll say, "Hi, Lydia, here's Mom." And hand the phone over. And our children are the same way. Even our grandchildren. We have a grandson in his 20s. And he doesn't call me on my cell phone. He doesn't call on the house phone. He calls Margaret's cell phone. Well, guess what? He wants to talk to Grandma. Why? Because there's a lot of wisdom there. Amen? Amen. So not only does a woman work, not only does she take care of her household, not only does she sew, fixes meals, and even plants a garden. And I'm speaking from experience. I read this and I'm going, that sounds like Margaret. Because she truly does sew. And she's the one that does the garden. I'm terrible at gardening. You know what? I'm one of those people that, she has a green thumb. Whatever she puts her hand to generally, prospers and the like. I have a black thumb. If you want a plant killed, just let me take care of it. It'll be fine. We'll give it a proper burial and all of that. Margaret left and went away for a week or so to be with her mom, and she said, now be sure you water the plants. That's the wrong thing to tell me. Because every day I watered the plants. And couldn't understand why the leaves were drooping, and she came back home and she said, what did you do? I said, I watered it. Yeah, but you didn't need to water it every day. You know, you drowned the thing. Well, just whenever the thought hit me, I put water in it. See? So there are some things that a woman can do that a man can't, and I understand that. There are things that Margaret does well that if I put my hand to it, why, I will ruin it. She knows that a paintbrush in my hand is a deadly weapon. You know, she's meticulous. She does everything in me. I just want to get it done. You know? You understand what I'm saying? Well, the Bible says that a woman is a worker. She's not lazy. She not only works with her hands, but her mind has a lot of wisdom. Let's go to verses 11 and 12. In Proverbs 31. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. What is that saying? That is saying that a mother loves. Loves in ways that sometimes are hard for us to understand. Let me put it this way. I saw this story. A teacher at school put this question to little James in his math class. She said, James, suppose your mother made a cherry pie and there were 10 of you at the table. Your mother and father and 8 children. How much of the pie would you get? A ninth, was his answer. No, James. No, pay attention. There are 10 of you in the home. Don't you know your fractions? Yes, ma'am, he replied. I know my fractions, but I know my mother even better. And she'd say that she didn't want any pie. The Bible has an awful lot to say about women, about mothers. Matter of fact, in some scriptures, he says, I was like a mother hen watching over the nation of Israel. There are qualities of being a mother that men don't possess. Now, granted, we will work with our hands and we have a lot of wisdom. And we do love. But there is something special that mothers can only do, that women can only do. And I believe that womanhood is an exalted position. What does Paul say in Ephesians? He says, husbands, love your wives as you would love your own body. To love her, to cherish her. Those are the words that we repeat when we come to a marriage ceremony. I promise to love and to honor, to cherish, to obey. Well, we don't do obey anymore. I did this one time at a wedding ceremony, although it was in practice, you know, in the rehearsal. And the groom was really nervous. I don't know if any of you guys who are married, you know, understand that. But, I mean, he was just nervous and the perspiration is on his forehead. And it's only the rehearsal. And the next day he was going to get dressed up in a tuxedo and have to stand there, you know, in the church. So I'm reading the vows. I said, now we're going to go and just, you know, repeat after me. And I so-and-so take so-and-so to be my wedded wife. And he did that. And I said, I promise to love, to honor, to cherish. He said, I promise to love, honor, and cherish. And I said, and give you my paycheck. And he said, and give you my paycheck. And then his eyes kind of bolted to me, and he says, does it really say that? And I said, well, for some it may, but you understand what I'm saying. That we promise to love and to cherish. But we do it differently than a woman does. That's what makes woman so unique. And then God blessed her with the ability to bear children. To carry within their bodies this product of love. He didn't give it to man. Men, aren't you glad? Amen? But he gave it to woman. And so woman, according to God, according to the Bible, is an exalted position. Amen? Come on, men. Say amen to that.
Amen.
I am so glad. I am so glad that God brought Margie and me together, because what he has done is the weaknesses that I have, she's very strong in. But she works hard. She has a lot of wisdom. She loves the Lord. She has a heart full of love and compassion. And God says that a woman like that, if a man finds a woman like that, he's found a good thing. And the thing that I've discovered is this, that God's good is always greater than anything that we could ever come up with. Amen? I mean, at the beginning, at creation, God said, it is good. And we've created things. I mean, we have refrigerators and cars, and we go, oh, they're wonderful, they're marvelous, but they wear out. But God still is the same yesterday and today and forever. And what he calls good is good beyond compare. For those of us that are married, we have, I hope, we can say that we have found, men, we have found a good thing. For those of you that are searching, or maybe will search, I pray also that you will find a good thing created and prepared by the Lord for you. Because what does it say at the end of that? In verse 28, her children rise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Let's pray.